Hello everyone and welcome to Ms. Stomber's virtual art lesson today. Today we're going to be learning how to create a dream world. So who wants to learn how to create a really cool dream world? Some fantasy avatar world that exists only maybe in our mind. Or maybe it's something that you've seen in a video game or perhaps in a bizarre dream of your own. So this is something that I made prior and that we're going to make together today. So that way you know the process of how to create your own dream world on your own after today's lesson. So let's get started. Let's go into our top corner button. This is our menu button. And we are going to make a new document. So go to File, New. And now let's set our image for 1200 pixels. And 1600 pixels for height. And our background is selected on white, and let's create our artboard. Put your 2 fingers on the screen and pinch your fingers together in order to minimize that artboard. Think of this as a piece of paper sitting on a table. It's the very same concept. We can minimize it, we can make it bigger, and this is all done by pinching your fingers together or expanding them out. So we are going to briefly go over how we are creating a foreground, a middle ground, and a background in Art Studio. We're going to be doing this as layers. Our layer panel sits right over here in the top of our navigation. It looks like stacked diamonds. You will see the piece of paper that we are working on right now is considered as layer 1. As we stack, layer 1, gotta bring that back, okay. So as we begin to stack our visual information, it will be on pieces of paper, kind of like tracing paper. This plus button adds in layers, and think of this as tracing papers or regular papers that sit on top of each other. Overlapping is very important in graphic design. So let's exit out of here. Actually, we're going to delete these so they don't confuse us. And there's our delete button. Okay, so our foreground is what sits closest to us. This is what is more easily seen and also what is most detailed. It's going to be our largest image. It's going to be the darkest image in value. Remember, this layer is coming straight at us. Now, the middle ground sits behind the foreground, and what occurs in the foreground, all these details that are really sharp, they kind of fade out as we move into the middle ground. And then the middle ground overlaps the background. And again, these details fade out even more. So the background is the most faded and the foreground is the most sharp. Okay, now if we have any mistakes in the future, this backwards button allows us to move backwards, and the forward button allows us to remake those actions. Let's go back into our foreground. We're on our layers. Okay, we're ready to work. Let's go to our menu, File, Import, Insert as a Layer. We are importing images as layers. This will organize our visual information. Make sure that you follow this routine. Import from photos. Let's go ahead and grab our foreground. I'm going to select Egypt sand because I have a strong interest in the ancient city of Egypt. And now it's plopped right in the middle of our composition. It's not exactly what we want, is it? No. So we are going to go into our layers and we see our image imported as a layer. Let's go ahead and rename layer 2 as foreground because this is our foreground layer. And now our foreground is sitting right on top of our white paper here because it's an image on a layer that overlaps this layer. The order matters. And see how this blue line is activated around the foreground layer? This means that this layer is active. it's turned on, which means that we can work on this layer. Anything that we do on this foreground layer will be recorded because it's activated. So let's go into edit. We're going to transform this layer. Now, one finger is to move it. 2 fingers is to do whatever you want to it in regards to scale, rotation, moving it. So put your 2 fingers down, grab that foreground, and we're going to expand our fingers because we want to make this foreground really detailed because our foreground is the most detailed layer. So let's place our foreground down. If we're happy, we hit apply, and there we go. So now we have layer 1 and we have our foreground. Let's go ahead into our menu and let's add in our middle ground. We're going to go to File, Import. Remember, insert as a layer. Import from photos. Let's go ahead and grab some pyramids. Now, this image is plopped right in our middle ground. However, it's not scaled correctly. It doesn't really look the way we want it to. So what do? We have to go into our layer panel. Let's rename our pyramids as middle ground. Exit out. Let's go to File, Edit, Transform, Move, Scale, Rotate. Take those 2 fingers, grab your pyramids, and expand these pyramids across your composition and put it right, like almost right on top of the foreground. You don't want to move it down here unless you want your pyramids in the foreground. But I want my pyramids to sit kind of behind the sand. I'm going to layer them right here. And apply. Now, if you look closely, my middle ground is overlapping my foreground. That doesn't really make sense because, as we know, the middle ground should be fading out. So the foreground should be overlapping the middle ground. That means we have to go into our layers and reorder our layer so it makes visual sense. Let's go to the right side and grab these 3 lines. We're going to select our middle ground and move this layer down. This will cause the order of the layers to be different, meaning our furthest back layer will be the background that we worked on, our guide. The next layer will be the middle ground, and the next layer will be the foreground, meaning that the middle ground sits on this layer and the foreground sits on the middle ground layer. So if we go back, we can see now when we zoom in how the foreground overlaps the middle ground. We see that if we zoom in. Okay, now I don't really want those arrows there, so again, I'm just going to go backwards. Okay, so now let's go ahead and grab our background. We're going to go to File, Import, Insert as Layer, Import from Photos, All Photos, and grab yourself a really cool background. I'm going to choose Space. Okay, and our space image is now sitting right in the middle of our composition. And that's not what we want. So how do we fix it? We're going to go into our layers, activate and grab your background layer. Let's rename it as background. And we're going to, again, go to the right and slide and move your background. This way, you have your background behind the middle ground and your middle ground behind the foreground. So now our background is sitting behind those pyramids, our middle ground. But it's not big enough, is it? Nope. So we have to go to our menu again, and we have to go to edit, and we have to transform it. We have to move, scale, and rotate that background to... Ooh, what happened here? Now, this is expanding my foreground, not my background. So, what did I do wrong? What do I have to do to grab my background? Layers. Make sure you're activated on that background. It's very easy to make a mistake. And you see how whatever layer you're activated on is the one that you're editing. So, File, Edit, transform, move, scale, rotate. Now we have the background. Let's expand that out. Now we got it. We have our background, our middle ground, and our foreground sitting in our composition here. But let's have some more fun. Let's make it even more surreal, and let's throw in a really random image. Let's make this a really fun play on reality. Let's go to our menu, file, import, as a layer from photos, and I'm going to grab something really bizarre. Let's try a football. That's pretty bizarre looking, right? Okay, so that's in our layers. Now let's move this football all the way to the front, and let's just call this Surreal Image. Because what we want to do is go now and play with this image. Let's move, scale, and rotate it. Let's make this, maybe we have a football flying through space. Maybe it's just levitating bizarrely. Maybe we even want to duplicate the football by clicking on these double boxes here. File, edit, transform, move, scale, rotate, 2 fingers down, click and drag. I'm going to click on this layer. I'm activated on it. File, edit, transform. It's really crazy looking, right? Okay, and last but not least, let's grab one of those footballs and give him a really cool effect. We're going to go to our menu, filters, stylize, drop shadow. Let's bring in that blur to 20, and let's make the opacity at full 100. We're going to apply and watch that football get some life by getting a nice drop shadow. All right, and there we have it. We have our surreal digital landscape.